Do you ever wonder if you're really making any kind of difference? Or do you ever wonder if your life would suddenly disappear, if anyone would really miss you? Or if anyone else's life would be all that different if you were suddenly gone? Apparently, a lot of people are feeling that way these days. If you just look at calls to the National Suicide Hotline, if you just compare April 2020 to April 2019, April 2020 is when the pandemic was getting really, really hard and people were shut off from a lot of different places and they're losing their jobs and life was just changing rapidly. And if you compare the number of calls that came into the National Suicide Hotline from April 2020 compared to just 1 year previously in the same month, calls to the National Suicide Hotline were up by almost 900%. That's a lot of people who are thinking pretty seriously that the world wouldn't be all that different if I suddenly weren't here. They're kind of looking for something that we hear about the Levites, one more thing with the Levites, at the end of chapter 4 in the book of Numbers, where it says once again that they were counted. They were counted, and we've talked previously about how you count to God. He counts you as a member of his family, but in particular it was talking about their work. Their work as the people who are going to oversee the tabernacle, their work counted. Their work made a difference. If they weren't there, somebody's life was going to be different. And I bet that felt good to hear that. Because man, it feels crummy to hear or believe the opposite. When somebody looks at you and says, you don't matter, or looks at a job that you tried to do and lets you know that, boy, in their eyes, you failed pretty miserably. Or maybe you're all alone, cut off from the places where you used to be able to make a difference, not able to work in the ways that you once did. And nobody says anything to you because it doesn't feel like you're doing anything. Not to mention the number of people in the world today who are saying that if you don't do something about this thing happening over here or that thing happening over there, if you don't do something about it, then you're not all that valuable of a human being. If you don't care about what's going on in this part of the country or in that part of the world or in this part of your own state, and if you don't do something about it, and if you don't do the particular thing that I'm asking you or demanding that you do about it, then you don't count. But that's not how it works. Not in God's kingdom. He doesn't expect you to be the one who does everything, or even exactly as much as the next person. In Matthew 25, Jesus told a story. It used to be called the parable of the talents. In some translations today, it's called the parable of the money bags. But a master, he tells a story in which a master gives out different amounts of money to his servants and tells them to go and do something with it. And to one guy, he gives 5 bags of money. To another guy, he gives 2 bags of money. And the third guy, he gives 1 bag of money. And they go out and do different things. And then they come back and they give a report on what they did with it. And the guy who was given 5 bags, he says, well, I used it to earn 5 more. And the master says, well done, good and faithful servant. And the one who was given 2 bags of money, he comes back and the master said, well done, good and faithful servant. Not because he earned 5, not because he did exactly the same thing the other guy did. He brought back 2 more. But the master knew he did what he could. He did something good. And he was faithful with what he gave him. He did something good, and he was faithful. Did you do something good today? Did you smile at someone? Encourage someone? Spend time with someone? Pray for someone that you don't have the ability to see right now? Were you faithful with the talents that God gave you? Did you use them to the best of your ability? Well, and God says, well done, good and faithful servant. If every single person on earth did good things and were faithful with the abilities that God gave them, well, we wouldn't eliminate sin. But man, we'd see a whole lot less of it in the world if everybody did that. And if you did today, you made a difference. And God says, well done. But it's never been your responsibility to save the world with what you do, or even anything close to it. That was the responsibility of the one who told that parable, the one who was good in every way, the one who was faithful with the one thing that his Father told him to do. And that was to love you. To love you. To allow you, even on the days when you haven't been so good, and even on the days when you haven't been so faithful, to know that you get a fresh start in Christ. who hung on a cross and was faithful to loving you even until it killed him, and you were forgiven for all the times that we were less than what we knew we needed to be. But if you're forgiven, it means that God doesn't hold anything against you. And if he doesn't hold anything against you, you don't need to hold anything against yourself either. You get to look at yourself in the same way that God does, as someone who in Christ has never really failed him. And if you've never failed him, which is a tremendous gift of grace that God gives us in Christ, well, you can rest well tonight. Rest well tonight, my friends, knowing that your work counts, your life counts. Your Father in heaven is smiling right now in your direction.